I am so pleased to be here with you, and with you, Dean Godenzi, with BC President Father Leahy, with BC Chancellor and my very dear and special friend, Father Monin, and with so many members of the extended BC family. Boston College and the Jesuit values it embraces have long been important in the life of my own family. My son Curran loved his 4 years here, and we loved that he was here. We have other BC graduates in our family, and we even have a nephew who is a current undergraduate student here. And I suspect that there'll be even more applicants in the future, Father Leahy. Our family loves this great university. My husband loved this great university, and so do I. I am so privileged to be with you at this storied School of Social Work to celebrate your 75th anniversary, your diamond anniversary. Congratulations. You have trained and inspired so many social workers to transform lives and strengthen the social fabric of our society. Dean Godenzi has said it well in the past. Social workers tackle the most challenging tasks society has to offer. They work where things are messy. They help to bring order out of chaos. And Lord knows we need that. As I was planning my remarks for today, just a few days after the 10th anniversary of 9/11, a day of unbelievable chaos, to be sure, I knew that I had to address that day of infamy and bravery, that I had to discuss the incredible resilience and courage of the survivors to move forward in hope and not hate, and the way their unimaginable grief was transformed into acts of love and service and compassion for others. The tragedy of September 11, 2001 was one of those handful of events in a lifetime that we experience collectively as a society, and that we always remember where we were, what we were doing, and how we responded. As I'm sure you remember all too vividly, even though the worst of the terror lasted for little more than an hour, we were in a slow-motion nightmare, not knowing what was coming next. It was unbelievable and all too real at the same time. I was in Washington, and my husband was at the U.S. Capitol. My fear and anxiety that day was, of course, focused on the tragic loss of life we were witnessing on television as the planes crashed into the Twin Towers and then into the Pentagon. But it was also focused on concern for my husband and, frankly, for the survival of our government institutions, praying that the Capitol wouldn't be hit, praying that the White House wouldn't be hit, being thankful forever to the courageous passengers who stormed the cockpit and crashed a plane in Pennsylvania to protect our government and those who run it. Back home here in Boston, families felt the tragedy in a particularly personal way. The two planes that hit the Twin Towers originated at Logan. The passengers in those planes were from our Commonwealth. We were punched in the gut. But in the immediate aftermath of that awful day, something extraordinary happened in our country. Neighbors took in neighbors. Shopkeepers emptied their shelves for strangers in need. Shoe store owners in New York even gave away tennis shoes to women in high heels so they could run. People helping people. Human beings searching for ways to connect to other human beings in need of human touch and human connection. It didn't matter if they were black or white, Asian or Latino. It didn't matter if they were Christian or Muslim, Jewish or Hindu. It didn't matter if they had no religion at all. People looked to each other for comfort. They saw each other as fellow human beings, suffering the same pain. Republicans and Democrats stood on the steps of the United States Capitol, arm in arm, and sang "God Bless America." They were united by love of country and not divided by political party. We flew flags outside our homes. We draped them from our windows. We wore them on our lapels. We were Americans. E pluribus unum, out of many, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, the worst event in American history spontaneously brought out the best in Americans. And in the difficult days after 9/11, I saw firsthand the power of social workers to do good and heal wounds and make better the life of the world. There were 206 souls lost that day who had families in Massachusetts. And my husband, as their senator, and as someone who understood the shock of unexpected, unspeakable loss, personally called every one of those 206 families. And he talked to most of them often and met with them frequently to offer comfort as only he could. He harnessed the power of government to help them. In October 2001, at one of his meetings with the survivors, Teddy brought representatives of agencies that could offer benefits and assistance to the families. They were talking about forms to fill out and were giving out numbers to call when a young widow stood up. She had dark circles under her eyes as though she hadn't slept for weeks. She said that she appreciated that all that help was out there and that the senator was letting them know about it. Really, she did, and it was all very nice. And she didn't want to sound ungrateful, but she could barely get out of bed. How could anyone possibly expect her to make phone calls and fill out forms for benefits? There was absolute silence in that room. My husband told me later that he could see heads nodding. The same story was written on the faces of all the survivors. His staff described the rest to me. When he left the meeting and got into his car, he was very agitated, and he raised his voice. "We need social workers," he said, "now. We have to get a social worker to help every family, to help them make calls and fill out forms, do whatever they need." And so they did. Along with the mental health department of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they put together an advocate system comprised of volunteer social workers who were paired with 9/11 families. And the program was a huge success. Those caring social workers were a lifeline for survivors like that young widow. They helped families navigate the services available to them and also to deal with their grief. Yes, Dean Godenzi, Social workers do tackle the most challenging tasks. They do get involved where it's messy. They do make order out of chaos. And what was the impact on the families? In a word, remarkable. Just look at what the families have done since that tragic day 10 years ago. They have demonstrated to the world their own humanity. By their actions, they have shown that good has triumphed over evil, and that while their hearts have been broken, their human spirit is alive and well. They have turned their grief into giving and have refused to give in to hatred and vengeance. They found the strength to affirm their belief in goodwill toward their fellow human beings and to reject the hate and the fear that perverts the human heart and infects the soul. They have decided to pay it forward in honor and in memory of those they have loved and lost. And if that's not the definition of goodness and humanity and decency, I don't know what is. Here in Massachusetts, a deep connection developed between the 9/11 families and the families of the fallen servicemen and women who fought in Afghanistan and Iraq. 9/11 survivors, along with Gold Star families, those who lost loved ones in the wars, formed the Massachusetts Military Heroes Fund. They bonded, and they worked together to give back and do service for others in honor of those they have lost, and in honor of those who continue to serve our country in wars in faraway lands. I was proud to be on the Rose Kennedy Greenway this past Sunday as volunteers packed 1,000 care packages for soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq as part of a service project sponsored by the Massachusetts Military Heroes Fund in honor of 9/11 families. People helping people. Human beings searching for ways to connect with other human beings in need of human touch and human connection 10 years later. Thanks to a provision in the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act, which President Obama signed into law in the spring of 2009, 9/11 is now officially a day of service and remembrance in our country. My husband said at the time the Serve America Act was passed, across history, Americans have risen to great challenges and responded in times of need. And America is America today because of their countless acts of compassion and commitment. As we serve, he said, we not only help others, we change ourselves. I know from my conversations with 9/11 families that they have been changed by service, that through service to others, they have been able to let go of bitterness and blame and to focus instead on the positive lives their loved ones led and on the love they gave. How we treat each other defines the character of our nation. It shapes the social environment in which everyday Americans flourish or fail. By giving back, by being connected to our fellow human beings and involved in the civic life of our nation, we have the power to effect positive change in our country and to raise the spirit of our people. That man who brought together those social workers and the 9/11 families 10 years ago, that man I miss so much, believed that no challenge was too great if we all worked together. He said, "We are Americans. This is what we do. We reach the moon. We scale the heights. I know it. I've seen it. I've lived it. And we can do it again. Yes, we can do it again. But we need the spirit of cooperation and collaboration that we saw in the aftermath of 9/11. We need the civility and sense of oneness that we had in the wake of those awful attacks. After all, our country really was founded on civility and unity. Before setting foot on this land, the pilgrims who traveled here on the Mayflower signed a single paragraph expressing a simple ideal. We covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic, they wrote. And to what end? For what purpose? The general good of the colony. The general good. A sense that we were all in this, in some common endeavor, together. We, they describe themselves. We, whose names are underwritten. We. What I believe we saw in the aftermath of 9/11 was a spontaneous, unspoken, unconscious renewal of that compact, a reaffirmation of our basic commitment to one another, a person-to-person covenant conceiving of society as a moral whole. Today, as we mark the 75th anniversary of the Graduate School of Social Work, and just days after we marked the 10th anniversary of 9/11 as a day of service and remembrance, it is my hope and prayer that we rekindle that spirit of we and that spirit of the general good. Here at BC, you're already on your way. As Father Frank Kennedy has said, this school awakens in us a dimension of care and concern, a sense of connectedness that is really God's work here. So how are we going to take that sense of connectedness, that spirit of the general good, God's work, and pay it forward? How are we going to help our neighbors and in the process help our nation live up to the promise that is America? That is our challenge. That is our mission. That, I believe, is our moral duty. So let us give meaning, real meaning, to the words of the song we know so well and love so much. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you very much.